this is where we might see a time when you might want to go back and watch that earlier video just to put all of this together. I'm not saying you have to, but at the end of this video, some things may make more sense in the earlier videos now that you've seen this information. So now we're going to work on finding a slope when we have 2 points, finding a slope when we have an equation, and then using that slope to tell about lines being parallel, perpendicular, or neither. So an important characteristic is we can look at lines. They basically have 2 different directions. They either go up from left to right or they go down. And so the way we start talking about how steep that incline is of up or down is called the slope. So that's why I'm saying the slope of this is, I don't know, 5. I'm describing how steep that line is. That's what the slope is really explaining. So to find the slope with 2 points, we're looking at what they call the rise over the run. So this is a really cool graphic because this is often what gets lost in the process of finding slope. It's not just an equation. It's an actual visual concept. So to get from point A or point Q to point P, I have to go up 5 units and over 3 units. That's what the slope really is. It's like GPS directions, how to get from one point to the next. But we tend to get so caught up in this formula, we lose sight of what's happening on the graph. So the slope is the vertical change, which is the rise, divided by the horizontal change, which is the run. But it's a description of how to start at one point and wind up at another. So the main equation that we start seeing is this y2 minus y1. When you're given a graph in the knowledge path, you don't need to go into the y2 minus y1 equation. You can just count. So if I'm here at 6, negative 2, I need to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 units. So my rise is 6. I need to go left 1, which is going to be that negative. Now notice what I did is different from the graph. Does it matter? Because if I did it this way, I would rise 6, I would run 1, and because it's left, it would be negative 1. So either way, you're going to get to the slope of negative 6. Either way. It doesn't matter which way you count on the graph. Either way. So now we start talking about, okay, well, I have x sub 1. That's how you pronounce that. I know that question's been burning in your mind since you took algebra last. X sub 1 and x sub 2. And this is where we start getting confused, right? Because there's so many letters on the page. This is what I do, guys. And I've been doing math for a very long time. How do I know which point is x1 and which point is x2? This is phenomenal, guys, right? So I know because the point that comes first is x1. The point that comes second is x2. So really the order of the question defines the x1 and x2. Now there's a bunch of other mathy explanations, but you know what? That one gets you there just fine. Just go with that. The first point is 1, the second point is 2. So when I'm not given a graph, I can do this and actually calculate things. So this point comes first. This is x1, y1. This point comes second. This is x2, y2. So my formula says y2 in red minus y1 in blue divided by x2 in red minus x1 in blue, which gives me negative 3/2, and I'm done. It doesn't matter that it's a fraction. Don't have it. Don't get upset. Don't be anxious. It's a final answer. You're done. That's cool. We can have that. A line with a positive slope goes up. A line with a negative slope goes down. So when we start calculating this, I have my x1 and x2. Point comes first is 1. Point that comes second is 2. And even highlighting these points, guys, in your notebooks in a different color will really help you make sure you don't make a mistake. So I plug in. 5 minus 5 is 0. 0 divided by anything is 0. So this line doesn't go up and it doesn't go down. What does it do? That's because it's flat. So this is where students go, well, why'd you just tell me about positive and negative slopes? Because I wanted you to know the one before it is negative, but when we get 0, it's just a flat line. So it doesn't fall into either one of those categories. Same thing, guys. First point is 1, second point is 2. I'm going to plug in. Notice I stopped color coding. This is the time for you to take some notes on your own and go ahead and color code. I actually use a mixture of color coding, and sometimes I just write a 1 here and a 2 here. Sometimes that just visually helps me. Because the most common mistake in slope, there's two. The first most common mistake is putting the x's on top. The second most common mistake is getting the points confused with 1 and 2. So doing 1 minus negative 4 right here is a common error. It's got to be the second point minus the first point. Now this is where I see a lot of mistakes in the knowledge path. 0 at the top is 0. 0 at the bottom is undefined. So make sure you're very carefully distinguishing between those two. So I have a positive slope, a negative slope, a slope of 0, and an undefined slope. Copy this down and tape it to your computer screen, put it on a post-it, put it on your wall. This is going to be extremely useful, this image. If I want to find the slope from an equation, it's probably slightly less complicated. Slightly, okay guys? Because you're not doing so much arithmetic with positives and negatives, you're just solving the equation for y. That's all you do. You solve it for y. So I have 3x plus 2y equals 9. I need to get rid of that 3x, so I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. Notice I didn't show it here, but I'm telling you on the video. Now I have 2y. That's 2 times y. So to get y alone, I got to divide everybody by 2. Now, it's a fraction and we're all having anxiety, but guess what? It's the final answer. The slope is the number in front of x. So this slope is a negative 3/2. You're done. That's the final answer. That's it. You don't have to do anything to fractions, to add it, subtract it, multiply, nothing. You're done. So you're going to get a lot of fractions, but we're not going to be doing a lot with it. So don't get anxious. If I want to know if lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither, all that you do is you find the slope. If two lines have the same slope, they're parallel. If two lines have opposite slopes, they're perpendicular. What do you mean by opposite, Ms. Robinson? 3/4, the opposite is negative 4/3. So I'm flipping the fraction, changing the sign. Flipping the fraction, changing the sign. Flipping the fraction, changing the sign. That's all it is. They're perpendicular. And guess what? If neither one of those is true, then it's neither. And that's okay. It's okay. So if I look at these two lines and I want to know if they're parallel, perpendicular, or neither, I have to find the slope. How do I find the slope? I solve for y. So in the first equation, I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. Then I'm going to divide everybody by negative 1. The slope is the number in front of x, so my slope is 3. Let's see what happens to the other line. I got to subtract x from both sides. Got to divide by 3. The slope is the number in front, so it's negative 1/3. The slopes are not equal, so they're not parallel, but they're opposites, right? The opposite of 3, flip it, change the sign. These are actually going to be perpendicular, and I can prove that to you by multiplying the slopes to get negative 1. This isn't really covered in depth in some of the algebra courses that I have, but it is useful information and just an additional example of how to find slope. Find slope. Solve for y. Number in front of x is your slope.